Hey you guys, it's Peter and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. Okay, so today's video is actually a video that I was gonna put on my Peter Monn channel. I know it's a book video, but I was gonna bring more attention to reading and it was gonna be kind of a marketing video for this channel to like get people to like, come over here, hang out, do some reading challenges, do some stuff with me. And then I thought, no, I've got a booktube channel for that. So I'm just gonna talk about this on my booktube channel. But if you watch my drama channel, what you'll know is that over there, I talk a lot about TV shows and books as well as the drama. And I'll talk about what books I'm reading and what shows I've watched, what movies I'm watching and stuff like that. And last week, somebody left me a comment and they said, how do you read so many books? And I was like, oh, like this is a good video to make. And so I was so thankful that somebody just handed me a video concept. So I was like, you know what? I think this is a video that I'm going to make to talk about how do I possibly read so much? How do I do it? Well, the funny thing about that question is, I think in comparison to a lot of readers, I feel like I'm losing my voice. In comparison to a lot of readers, I don't actually think that I read that much. I mean, I read quite a bit, but I don't read like, I remember talking to my Aunt Kathy years before she passed away, and I said something to her about like how many books I had read that year or something like that, or how many books I'd been reading. And she said that she reads like 1 to 2 books a day. And she was like a Kindle reader. So I just got my Kindle. That was my last video that I posted, that I got my Kindle. But she was like, your Aunt Kathy reads like 1 to 2 books a day. I was like, what do you read? She's like, I read anything. She was reading like 1 to 2 books a day. My best friend, Tanya Jean, she literally, and a good book for her is 800 to 1200 plus pages. She just read like an entire Sarah J. Maas, that Court of Thorn and Roses. She read that series in like 3 days. She loves really like big, thick books, long stories. And Tanya will like sit down at like 10 o'clock in the morning if she's not working, and she'll finish a book and she'll start another one that night. She sometimes finishes 2 and 3 books in a day. Reads big physical copy books. Sometimes she reads her Kindle on her phone. She loves her Kindle too. But I know a lot of people that read a lot. So what's funny about the question is that to me, I feel like I read quite a bit, but I don't feel like I read as much as, I mean, I see some people on Book Talk and Bookstagram that they're already at like 200 books for the year. I'm like, ma'am, settle it down. But one of the reasons, like, people are like, why do you care so much about how many books you read in a year? And why do you do the Goodreads challenge? I mean, one of the reasons why I care is, ever since I've been a kid and went to the library with my mom and got books, that books were an escape for me. I loved books. I loved meeting new characters and entering new worlds and making new friends, you know, in books and things like that. And books still do that for me today. And so the more books I read, the more worlds I'm introduced to, the more stories I'm introduced to, the more lessons I learn, the more characters I meet, which characters to me are friends. And so that's why I like to read a lot of books. But what's interesting about this is, I think this might have been why I got the question on my video the other day. But when you look at my Goodreads challenge, okay, so for my goal for this year is 112 books, okay? Now let me tell you how I got to 112 books, the goal for that, okay? Where's my past challenges? How do I get to my past challenges? Hold on a second. Challenge details, past challenges and goals. Okay, so just to show you that I do not really read that many books. I mean, I read quite a bit, but I don't read that many, okay? So last year, my goal was 100 books, and I ended up reading 47. I don't think I don't think 47 is, I mean, for a Goodreads goal, I think 40, first of all, I failed miserably. Okay, I got below a 50%. I failed miserably my Goodreads challenge. Then in 2023, my goal was 62 books, and I read 28. In 2022, which was a really tough year for me, my goal was 104, and I only read 14. But I kind of stopped reading, like, really early in the year, and that just, I remember I was stuck in the Sundown Motel by Simone St. James for like 9 months that year. 2021, my goal was 102 books, and I read 110 books, okay? And in 2020, I read 100 out of 100 books, and then my reading goal for 2019 was 100 books, and I read 40. And so then 47, 68, 54, 36, 31. So, I mean, I'm averaging, I would say, about 50 books a year. There's been a couple years where I've read 100 and 110 books. So, since the most I had read was 110 books, this year I was going to make it, I think, no. So, that year that I read 110 books, my goal was 102. So this year I was going to make my goal, I think 110 because of that. Well, on New Year's Eve, I was texting my friends, Mel and Nikki, about our Goodreads goals, setting our Goodreads goals. So I was texting them all this, and Nikki said, I think I said 110 or 111. I can't remember. Anyway, and she ended up setting it for 112 because she thought I said 112. Well, I hadn't set mine yet, so I set mine for 112 too. So anyway, that's why I have 112 this year. So far this year, I am currently at, this is the best year I have ever had reading ever since I started on Goodreads, okay? Which I started on Goodreads. I will tell you my first year on Goodreads. Hold on, past challenges. I remember, this is so funny. I remember a friend of mine from high school, years and years and years ago, she and I were talking and she said something about Goodreads and I go, what's Goodreads? And she goes, you're not on Goodreads? And that was like the very first time I joined it. And that was in 2014. So far for this year, I have read 79 out of the 112 books. But we're going to pass that by. And I was 20, but I'm currently 19 books ahead of my schedule. I'm very, 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 very proud about that. So people ask me all the time, like, you listen to audiobooks? For a long time, I just listened to audiobooks. I would read a physical copybook here and there. I just got a Kindle. I've had Kindles in the past, but I don't really use them. I am actually using this one quite a bit. So people ask me all the time, well, how do you, like, keep so many books going at the same time? Don't the stories get confusing? Like, how do you do it? Okay, so I've explained this before, and this is not necessarily the case of my physical copybooks that I'm reading right now. But usually what I do is I'll have, like, a memoir, like a Joan Didion memoir that I'm reading. I need to actually, these are kind of my leftovers from last month. I need to get, some of these I'm kind of, like, close to the end. So I'll show you the books that I'm reading in just a second. But some of them I'm kind of close to the end. So my goal is to, like, finish some of these out and then replace them with, like, I usually read, like, a memoir every month, like a Joan Didion memoir. And then I read, like I was reading the Margaret Wrinkle books, the nature books. So that would be considered, like, a memoir, like a book of nonfiction. And then I would read, like, a book of short stories. Like, I was reading the Raymond Carver short stories and the Jill McCorkle short stories. And so those are two completely different things. And then I would read, like, a classic novel, which right now is $80 to Stanford, which is not really a classic novel. It's a vintage novel. It's by Lucille Fletcher that wrote the movie Sorry, Wrong Number. But anyway, that's beside the point. I read different kinds of books. So for me, when I'm reading all these different books, okay, it's very similar to me as, like, I have a list on my phone of all of my weekly TV shows, like Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of Orange County, Real Housewives of Miami, okay? Like, people are like, I mean, nobody says, how do you watch all the Housewives at the same time? You don't get them confused. I don't get them confused. I know the difference between Marisol Patton, and I know the difference between Vicki Gunvalson in Orange County. Well, Tamra Judge, because Vicki's not on there anymore. I mean, I know them. I've watched it one. You know what I mean? So I don't really get the stories confused on TV shows. You know, I'm watching Poker Face. I'm watching Ozark. I mean, the stories are different. I can watch an episode here and an episode there, and it doesn't really confuse me. Books are very similar to me on that. So at any given time, now we're going to add in the Kindle. I've decided I'm not going to do, like, 5 books on the Kindle. I'm going to just do 1 book on the Kindle at a time. So right now, the book that I'm reading is from the Zombie Fallout series, and it is by Mark Tulo. And this is the book that I'm reading right now. You can see. Well, you can't see it anyway. So I am, like, well, not as far as I thought I was in there. I'm like 20% on it. Okay, so I'm reading that right now. So whenever I'm like, I want to go outside for a second, or I'm just taking a break or whatever, I'll grab my Kindle. It's real easy to get a couple pages in here and there. I love also, like, laying in bed, and, like, when I get up, if, like, or, like, from a nap or whatever, I'll read a couple pages while Alex is watching a show or something. So this is kind of like my constant, like, go-to book to pick out. Every night, well, when I'm walking, okay, and I'm going to the pool, or I'm around the house, I'm doing errands and stuff like that, I always listen to an audiobook. And it's one of the reasons why I just, like, bump through audiobooks so quick. I also can listen to audiobooks very, very quickly. I usually listen to an audiobook at a minimum of 2.5 speed. And I don't know how, but I remember books and I remember things at very, very quick speed. So, for example, the book that I'm currently listening to, which was a recommendation from my friend Nikki, is Night Watcher by Daphne Wollstonecraft. And I'm actually listening to it at 2 times 5 speed. So that greatly reduces how long of a book is. Usually a book that's like 10 hours will end up being like 4 hours. And so, or, you know, whatever. Anyway, no, that wouldn't make sense. 2.5. Anyway, so I'm listening to an audiobook. Well, now I've slowed down a little bit, but I've been listening to an audiobook about one every 3 days, which means I'm finishing about 2 to 3 books a day. When I went into this year and I wanted to have 112 as a goal, my goal was to finish 2 books a week. Then, and I've shared this story so many times, in December or November, when I started reading the Advent calendar book, every night I would light the candles, I would make my coffee, and then I would get my Advent calendar books out. I was reading 3 Christmas Advent calendar books. I think I was reading like 5 Christmas books at the same time. And I would read a chapter in each one of them. Well, by the end of December, I had 5 books done. So that's kind of my mentality, is at the beginning of every month, I pick several books. Some of them I finish before the month is over. Some of them I finish 3 books in the series that month. But at any given time, I have several books. Now, I haven't been reading as much since we got back from vacation. But like right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books that I'm currently reading. Okay? So I might like one book, I might read like 40 pages in it. The next book, I might read 5 pages in it. It just is kind of how I feel for the night. So for example, I'm currently reading $80 to Stanford. And this one, like I'm reading like a chapter a night in it. You can see I'm on chapter 5. I started this before we went on vacation. It's a short novel. I'll finish this soon. I'm trying to read the Phyllis Reynolds Naylor's Witch's Sister series. It's a middle grade series this summer because when I was a kid, I loved these. I think there's 7 books in the series. I've only read the first 2. So I'm trying to make it through these. I'm reading like a chapter of these a night. I just bought this book because it is, and I just was reading a couple pages of it. So I add this to my group, but it's not really. It's called Rest Stop. It's a horror novel by Nat Cassidy. I'm reading the Rotten Ruin series, so I'm reading a chapter of this a night. The Kyla Stone, I was reading the Edge of Collapse series, but I am now reading the Point of Impact series. I'm probably reading about 30 pages of this a night, and I love it, and don't be scared of my bookmarks that I absolutely love. By Gigi and Bo. I think she sent these to me years ago, and I love them. If you love, I'm really, really into post-apocalyptic series right now. Kyla Stone is the best post-apocalyptic series that I've ever read in my life. Any of her series. With my neighbor, I am currently reading Ice Planet Barbarians. She has only read the first chapter. We haven't really made it that far. I am actually on page 90, and I have not really touched this in a while. I'm reading Kel Byron's A Lonely Broadcast. I'm reading about 5 pages of this a night. And then I just recently started, I went back and I started because I bought the anthology of the first 4 books, I think, or 3 books of the R.L. Stine Fear Street books. So I'm going to probably go through these, and then I might add like a Joan Didion book in there. So I'm reading a memoir and a Raymond Carver story, or maybe I'll do some Southern, who was I going to read? Maybe like some Eudora Welty or something like summary in Southern Gothic, maybe, for short stories. But that's how I read so much. You know, I'll read like, if I'm reading a short story book, I'll read like 1 short story a night. And if there's like 10 in the book, well, in 10 days, you're done with the book. And it's not about the completion of it. It's about just enjoying all different kinds of different books and different mediums. You know, if I'm reading like the Margaret Wrinkle book, which she's a naturist that talks about like the birds and the trees and all that stuff, I'll read several entries a night. If I don't feel like reading one book, I'll put it to the side and I'll read the other one. But then at any given time, I have like 8, 9 books going on. And so, and like this one that I'm reading in my Kindle is a zombie, it's the zombie Fallout. So it's all about zombies and whatever. I don't really get that confused with this woman that is working in a radio tower. Like they're completely 2 different books. To me, it's like watching 2 different TV shows. And definitely with audiobooks. And I don't know if maybe for me, as a learner, it's how I take in the different information, and maybe I'm reading some physical copy and some of it audio, I don't know. But at any given time, I have 8 to 10 books going on. So, I mean, if you're doing that every couple days, you're probably going to finish a couple books. And the funny thing about it is that I was thinking about this not too long ago because somebody was like, that's crazy, you're constantly reading that many books. I know it seems crazy to other people. Don't worry about it. It works for me. It works for me. It makes me happy. That's all that you need. Books should be for enjoyment. So, and education. But that's what it makes me happy. It doesn't matter if whatever anybody else thinks about it. But anyway, I was thinking about when I was a kid, and my mom and I would go to the library, and she'd say, you can get as many books as you're going to get as long as you're going to read them. So I'd have this huge stack of books. And my mom would be like, Peter, you're not surely going to read all those books? And don't call me Shirley. I'd be like, yes, Mom, I am. But I can remember having them like on a rainy day in the summer and, you know, in my bedroom floor. And I would like read a couple pages out of this book. I'd have like, do you remember the records that you would get where you turn the pages? I'd listen to one of those and I'd like look through another book. And so I did the same thing when I was a kid. Maybe I've just been doing this ever since I was a kid. I don't know. But I will say this, I have loved my return to physical copy books, and I love them so much. And I have to tell you, the more I use my Kindle, the more and more I love it. So, but I will forever and ever always be a diehard audiobook lover. Back in the day when I was listening to it on tapes and records. Anyway, that's how I read so many books. But I don't really think that I mean, when I talk to other friends of mine that read, they were already at like, some of them, I mean, Tanya doesn't even have Goodreads. She's like, I was like, how many books do you think you've read this year? She's like, I don't know. She's like, I think it keeps track on my whatever. She's like, I can look at her Kindle or whatever she buys her books. And she's like, I could look. One time she looked and she had like 175 books. I was like, 175 books and your books are like 800 or 900 pages. She just laughed. She doesn't care. I care. So anyway, let me know if you have any other book suggestions of books that I definitely need to read this summer. I got some reviews coming to you later this week. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.